At first glance, my craft room looks relatively organised and clean, but up close this room was in desperate need of a deep clean and organise. I wanted to clean and organise every drawer, box and cupboard in my room, wipe down every surface and set myself up for maximum productivity coming into 2025. So this is what I've been doing the past few weeks. This all sounded great, but actually getting started was a task in itself. I was so overwhelmed at the amount of work ahead of me, but eventually I realised that just getting started somewhere in the room was key to picking up motivation and momentum to complete the studio clean. I filmed this process for you and I hope it gives you some motivation or some tips to tackle your own space. One of the first things I did was remove all the plants that I had around my room, and while removed I watered, trimmed and also rehomed to different places in my home some of the plants that weren't doing super well in the space. Another first step was removing all clutter that did not belong in my room, so kids' toys, linens, cups, and anything that didn't have a permanent place here. I then decided to pull down my curtains and wash them, and whilst they were in the machine I cleaned all the windowsills and the windows as well as the floors and the walls around my main desk. My plan of attack was to do each piece of furniture one by one, starting with my main desk and the display shelves on the wall. I removed all of the surface items and cleaned each surface, and I even sanded off some really stubborn marks on my desktop. Once this corner was clean, I rehung my washed curtains and I began putting everything back in its place, leaving out anything that didn't belong or anything that I no longer needed. These were all good beginner steps to warm me up to the larger tasks of organising every little supply in my room. And it's kind of funny as I watch this footage, these beginning steps feel like such a long time ago now because I have done so much more since then. I recommend going slowly by doing one piece of furniture at a time or even one box or one drawer at a time. And this way you can set yourself lots of smaller goals instead of one huge, overwhelming one. And as you go, it's easy to see what fits and what doesn't, what needs to be decluttered, or where you need to scale down. I try to only keep things that I actually use, so to not be overwhelmed and to hinder my creative process. But it's still so easy to accumulate stuff. And this process gave me the perfect opportunity to get to know everything that I own and to rehome what I do not use and what is just taking up space. It's also really easy for things to get misplaced and disorganized over time. So while my studio looked relatively good at the beginning of this task, it was definitely becoming a really dusty and disorganized space when you looked up close, especially inside the drawers and in the cupboards. Now, before we get deeper into the studio cleaning and organising, I wanted to take a moment to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Printify. Printify is a print-on-demand service which can help you to generate an extra source of income from home. This could be a new little side hustle, or if you already have an active shop like I do, you can add a variety of new physical products to your shop by using Printify. Creating an account with Printify is free and there are no upfront costs or monthly fees. You simply pay your fulfillment fees by setting the price of your product to cover both the order fulfillment and your profits. This means you can get started with selling physical products without the risks of large upfront costs or the hassle of shipping them out yourself. Explore the catalogue of over 1,000 products for products that you like and that suit you and your shop. Today you can see me creating a design to suit a journal cover. You can create your design however you like. Printify even has a product creator that you can use, but I chose to paint my elements traditionally and then I worked with them in Procreate. I wanted to make a design with cute little farm animals and greenery that felt springy or summery. Once you're happy with your design, you can apply it to your product, and then with just a few clicks, you can publish and integrate the product into your store. For me, since I have an Etsy shop already, I integrated the journal into my existing shop, but Printify is also compatible with many other platforms such as Shopify, Amazon, TikTok, Wix, Squarespace, and more. You can create your listing as usual using the mock-up photos from Printify immediately, or I recommend ordering a sample of your product and taking your own photos of it, as this just allows for your own branding personality to come through, and it also gives you a good chance to get to know your product so that you can market it well. Once published, all you really need to do is advertise your product and share it on social media, because Printify will handle the rest, taking care of order fulfillment directly to your customers with their print-on-demand service. Here's a look at the design I created and applied to a journal from the Printify catalogue. The notebook turned out so cute, the print and colours look great, and there are lots of good quality pages to use. This notebook has mostly lined pages which are perforated so you can tear notes out if you like. My customers can shop it directly from my Etsy store, and for me the work is all done. This can become a great source of passive income, and if you're interested in learning more or creating your own products, make sure to check out the link in the description box. Thank you again to Printify for sponsoring today's video. So the next day I went to the shop and I bought myself a few different drawer organizers and containers to help me tackle my Alex drawers. I set the goal for myself to clean and organize both my longer Alex drawer unit and both sets of drawers under my main desk. These were probably the areas I was procrastinating doing the most, especially the Alex drawers on the right side of my desk, as I use those to hold my personal journaling supplies, and they'd really gotten a little bit out of hand with so many different categories to sort. I began with cleaning out my washi drawer, which was an easy start as I knew I wanted to keep it for my washies and that it just needed a really good wipe over and a declutter. I wiped out the organizers as well. These are just cutlery trays which holds heaps of rolls of washi tape. Then I used some of the new tubs to sort through the washi, so I just tried to be really honest with myself about which tapes I actually use and which I don't find myself reaching for. I have a friend who's also into paper crafts, so I set aside everything that I wasn't keeping into boxes that I thought that she might like to keep, which made it kind of easier to let go of some things because I knew that they were going to someone who could actually use them and that I could also give my friend some nice new goodies. Throughout this process, I also threw out lots of junk and items that were no longer usable, and then I also donated a small amount of things. Organising the washi tapes back in, I had a lot more spare space in the organisers, so I decided to put my Christmas tapes back in this drawer as well, as I'd previously been storing them elsewhere. I also added 2 little clear organisers in a space down the side, and in those I put my most frequently used tapes. Moving down the rest of the drawers, it was pretty much the same process of pulling everything out and wiping it all down and sorting it out. I did work a few drawers at a time because I just wasn't sure if I was going to keep the drawers organized in the same way or if I was going to change it out. I have a lot of containers of beads which I've accumulated over the years, and I used to keep them stored in just one of these drawers, which meant whenever I was looking for something in particular, I had to pull a lot of stuff out to find it. So I decided to dedicate the next 2 drawers to my beads, and that way I can see what I have and find what I have a lot easier. It takes a bit of shuffling around to get everything to fit neat and tidy, but it's so worth it. The next drawer below holds some old stationery sets and some boxed postcards. I'm using one of the new containers to hold the stationery sets and then fitting everything else in like a puzzle so that everything is accessible and visible when I open up the drawer. For the last 2 drawers, I'm using those to hold my art supplies such as paints, pencils, books, and paper. There was a lot of old stuff in these drawers that needed to go, and now everything is much more organised and tidy. Then it was time to move along to my desk. The drawers here on the left hold some random supplies. The top 2 drawers have my binding supplies, and then below that are my stamp sets, embossing powders, and some miscellaneous items. Again, I worked a few drawers at a time, clearing them out, wiping them down, and then reorganising everything in. I decided to keep the top 2 drawers as my binding drawers, as this works really well for my process when I'm making my books. You can see how disorganized this drawer is, how much clutter there is, how many things are just loosely floating around underneath. I have all of these old binding templates which I've kept just in case they fit another journal, and I don't think I should do that anymore because, as you can see, I just have so many of them. It's very, very rare for one binding template to fit a new set of journals, so it's easier just to make a new one each time and just to recycle the old one. So that's what I would do moving forward. The next 2 drawers hold my stamps, and I keep my stamps in old CD cases, which works well for most of my stamps. I knew that I would have a lot of stamps here to declutter as well. I use a lot of them. Over time, I have discovered what's actually usable for me and my style, and there were many here that I knew I hadn't used in a really, really long time. I also didn't love having these stored in the drawer because while they did fit, it wasn't always easy to find the stamp set that I needed, and I would often have to pull out lots of cases just to find the one that I was after. So I pulled these all out and I sorted them into my keep piles. I gave the rest of them to my friend, and then amongst these I also have a few larger stamp sets which fit in larger plastic cases like DVD sized cases or larger boxes. Quite a while back I found an old wooden CD display stand at the tip shop, and this is where I'm going to store my stamp sets from now on. So apart from those ones that are too big or too bulky to fit, all of the CD cases will slip inside here. So once I sorted through and organised the sets into the CD stand, there were a few empty spots at the top, which I'm not going to intentionally fill, but if I do happen to add to my collection, I'll have the space to do so. With the remaining stamps, I sorted them into the drawer as neatly as I could. I stored them along with my acrylic blocks and my ink pads. I really don't have a lot of ink pads as I just don't need them. And again, I just shuffled everything around until I was happy with it. I also used all the old drawer containers and trays that I had before, as well as the new ones throughout this entire clean. There's really no need to change out all the containers to match or anything like that. I just used what I had wherever it worked and then added some more where needed. The next drawer down holds my embossing powders and my heat tool, and then the final drawer was left empty for now because I didn't have anything to put in it. Now moving over to the right side drawers, these ones are quite a mess and a big mix of things. This is where I like to store my journaling supplies so that I have everything I need right by me whenever I'm journaling. This is a system that works well, but over time things have been thrown in willy-nilly and made it both messy and difficult to find things. So I pulled everything out of all the drawers and laid them out on the floor, wiped the drawers out, and then began sorting. This took me so long but was so well needed. The general categories I sorted were personal ephemera to journal, papers and scraps, vintage papers and scraps, stickers, books and book pages, and then I also wanted a place for my own kits as well, so kits that I've designed. I used different trays and tins to organise the items as best as I could. I let go of a lot of stuff that I hadn't used in years despite it being in these drawers waiting to be journaled with. I'll often just come across papers that I love or that feel special to me, and that's when I put them aside for my own personal journaling. But realistically, there's always a lot here to choose from, and it's always being added to faster than I can use it up. I sorted my own kits into clear sleeves, and then they sit inside this little wooden tray, which hopefully will help me find things easier when I'm looking for them. These are paper collections, doilies, and journal with me kits from my shop. I also sorted these objects by size somewhat, so using old tins to hold smaller pieces of ephemera and larger tins to hold larger pieces. These are organised as best as I could, but really are still a big mix of paper types. Once everything was organised into containers or trays, I then just put them into the drawers however they would fit best, which again just needed a lot of reshuffling to find the best combinations. And on this same day, even though I was really tired and over it, I pushed myself to also clean and sort my tech station, as I call it. So this piece holds my printer, my laptop, my shipping label printer, and the drawers are also filled with various cords, photo printers, chargers, and more stuff like that. While I was doing this, I also cleared and cleaned off the display shelf on the wall above it. And while I really didn't feel like doing more on this particular day, I felt like it wasn't a massive task and it would free me up to do more the next day. So it's kind of like doing a favor for my future self and pushing through that last little bit of furniture on this side of the wall. Excitingly, when doing this room clean out, I was also waiting for my brand new printer to arrive, so I was cleaning the space in preparation for that. I've got myself a mega tank printer as well as a Cricut machine to hopefully begin making some sticker sets and maybe some physical paper kits this year. Unfortunately, my new printer does not have an inbuilt scanner though, so for now I'm keeping my old printer for that function. My old printer fits in the bottom drawer of this shelf, so I put it in there for now so that when the new printer comes, it can fit in the open space. The next day, I was well and truly tired of cleaning, but I knew that I needed to push through, and after everything that I had done so far, I knew how well needed this was and that it just had to be done. So one thing I struggled with when cleaning my display shelf was the feeling that I have documented too much. And then I was just questioning my entire life choices and existence. And as a person who's built a job around this journaling habit, I had to remind myself that Everyone has their own passions and enjoyments in life, and it's okay that this is mine. I think as long as my family, my children, my friends know that eventually if this stuff ever becomes theirs, that they have my full and complete permission to keep what they want and dispose of the rest. These books will bring me happiness during my lifetime, and that is their purpose. Then came my Kallax shelf unit, and yes, the hair is up now as it was so hot this day. This was the first day the sun had actually come out since starting the deep clean after a gloomy couple of days. The gloomy days really kind of helped enable me to feel like I was using my time well, but once the hot summer sun came back out, my husband and my kids went out for swims, I started to feel both tired of the process and also newly inspired to finish much faster. Pushing through the negative feelings toward an end goal of knowing exactly what I have and exactly where to find it in my room. I think towards the end of the clean, as I felt some of these feelings, I did less filming of the process, but I went through absolutely everything, including my sewing cabinet, which you see there. The only thing I did not do was inside my tubs of fabric, inside that green cupboard. I felt like this needed a whole dedicated day in itself later down the track when I can actually rewash, dry and iron everything and sort through it all, so I just left that for now. That night after a shower, I also tackled my Tool Alex unit, which holds most of my vintage ephemera. Some of the categories that I have in here are playing cards and game pieces, vintage ledger paper, envelopes and cards, maps and books, vintage book paper, vintage wrapping paper, and paper dolls. One thing I will say is it will get worse before it gets better. Pulling everything out and cleaning under and inside everything is such a huge task. You'll have random piles around you where they just don't belong and things that just don't find a place until the very end. Lastly, on a new day, it was time to tackle my workbench. I was kind of looking forward to this because I use this space a lot and it needed a good refresh. Again, I wiped down every single surface before putting everything back. On the opposite side of this bench is more crafty supplies like paints and mixed media, stencils and palettes and sponges and tools. I also have my paper cutters, rolls of wallpaper, books and various supplies that just fit in the spaces here. I was overall pretty happy with the side's organisation, but it definitely needed a good wipe out and tidy up. The only thing I really moved around was my Big Shot dies and my embossing folders, which I placed back on the opposite side of this bench where I had ended up with some empty cubbies. Now for the bench top. I got these tiles on clearance that came up for $4 a box, so that's one tile mosaic for $1. I got a few boxes. I got enough to cover the bench, plus some extras, some grout and some liquid nails, and I began tiling the bench top. This is something I've considered doing for a long time because I do a lot of painting on this bench and it can be hard to clean it up. A while back there was a bit of a trend of tiling furniture like bedside tables and sideboards, and I have always liked the look of it, but I just really thought that this would be quite functional for me. I plan on adding a large cutting mat on top of the workbench as well so that I do have a flat surface when I need one. Following some mixed advice and tutorials, I decided to glue these tiles down with liquid nails. I used some tape to help me tile the sides of the bench too, and then I waited about 2 days to grout. I have never done this before, so it might have been user error, but I ran out of grout before I could finish the whole bench. I went back to get more grout and they were out of stock in the colour and the type that I used, so I'm still currently waiting to finish the edges of the bench and a small section on the top. But you get an idea of how it will look. I think it brightens the space a lot, and I hope I won't regret it. It feels a lot easier to clean off dust and paint, so I'm looking forward to working here. Lastly, it was time to set up a space for my new Cricut machine. I got this old furniture piece off Facebook Marketplace quite a while back, and it needed a really good clean. I wiped it down several times. This was apparently an ex-post office piece, so I even found some old stamps in it. The guy I bought it off had it stored in a shed on a property, and so it was covered in that real dusty dirt, like actual soil dirt and dust. I put it upside down as well and wiped it that way too to remove all of the dust, just wiping it several times. For this piece of furniture, I have some random old drawers and some boxes to use to organise my stuff inside of it. I removed the handles of these old loose drawers, sanded them and wiped them out. They do need to be sanded again. But I also built this old Kaiser Craft box that I got for $3 at an op shop in case it comes in handy for some storage too. This part of my craft room will be incomplete for a while as I'm not making anything permanent until I know what needs I actually have for the space. I've added a top to this for now for the Cricut to sit on, and I plan on adding some kind of storage beside the postal unit to make it the same width as my workbench before I screw everything down. For now, I'm placing my sticker papers in the unit under the Cricut, and I've got some clear A4 containers and some boxes for storing various papers to print on and to experiment with. Those little drawers that I sanded fit okay on those bottom two shelves, and I'm using those basically like containers or trays. Now finally I got my new printer and here I am unboxing it. I haven't fully set it up yet or even tested it out, so there is going to be a lot of learning and trial and error for me over the coming months, but I'm excited to get started challenging myself in something new that I've been too scared to try for way too long. Finally, I gave my room a good sweep and mop. I placed some of my plants back in the room, and here is my room all refreshed and almost complete. Just like any space, this room is constantly evolving and changing according to needs and style and tastes. I cannot tell you how good it feels to have a clean, organized and refreshed craft room ready for creativity to unleash. It's been the school holidays here in Australia, so I haven't done massive amounts of work since around Christmas time. But getting this room sorted for when my kids return to school just means that I can be fully productive when the time comes for me to get immersed back into my work. I'm so grateful for this space. It's something I dreamed of having for many years and worked really slowly toward, and taking care of it in this way was so rewarding and reminded me so many times of where I started out. I really hope this studio vlog inspired you or motivated you in some way, and I want to thank you so much for hanging around until the very end. If you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up on this video. It will help me so much. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you again really soon in my next video.